Signs of the Southland, Monday, January 30th, 2023. Gentlemen, we have a new guest with us, Asa Waters, our men's basketball writer aficionado. Asa, why don't you introduce yourself to the commentariat and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks for having me. I've had the pleasure of writing a few articles about what might be the worst Georgia Tech basketball team I've seen. What is actually probably the worst. But that's okay. I still love watching the games. I didn't go to Tech. It's my fun fact about myself. My dad did, and so he got me into this whole business. I'm excited to talk about the team regardless. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't we get right into it? Mr. Purdy, set the stage for men's basketball for me. What happened this week, and why do we have Asa here to diagnose it?
Well, for one, they keep losing.
Other than that,
other than that, we lost two games. And I'll start with this. Josh Pastner, every press conference says you have to score 70 to win in the ACC. The winning team in both these games got to 70, but the losing team only one time crossed 50. And it was I would say it's not for the lack of effort. I think the effort was there, but it was just so clear that they were so outmatched in both situations. Clemson was 24th ranked. Duke was 26th if you go past the top 25 in the AP. And it was just so bad. It was so bad. I don't know how else to put it.
I think a sign that we're like the thing in the background that you couldn't hear is me cackling at the fact that both of these scores, and I think a sign that both of us can do nothing but laugh is very bad.
It's where we're at.
It's very bad.
I wasn't at the Clemson game, but I was at the Duke game, and I got there really early just to like check and see how many Duke people would show up, how early. It got to about 90% full, but it wasn't as many Duke fans as I was expecting relative to how bad Tech has been and how few people I would have thought were going to come. So that's where I'm at with that. My last note, we lost 86-43 to Duke. We scored 43 points. We gave up 43 points in the first half, 43 in the second half, and lost by 43 points.
Don't like.
Asa, how are you feeling?
I feel like after the Miami game, we were like at a crossroads of like, maybe we're not as bad as we thought.
Right.
Maybe Pastor was right in his preseason press conferences, and like this is a team that'll just gel together, and the star of the team will be the team. And then we lost pretty embarrassingly to Florida State, and I don't think we've won since. Things are not looking good. And usually in the past, I think we all know this, like Pastor's teams have gotten better. They usually start off pretty bad, which is not great. But
he said that himself. He says that every press conference. He's like, this is how he rationalizes it. It's like, it'll happen.
And it's not happening. It doesn't. It's the opposite. This is like we're getting astronomically worse. I don't think I've ever seen. Oh yeah, no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I got two things. One, sorry that your dad is putting you through all of this.
This is your father's fault, to be clear.
We didn't even have a catastrophic loss to a low-major team this year. That's the most astonishing thing to me. No Coppin State, no Gardner-Webb, no Grambling.
It's still on the table.
Florida Tech still.
If we lose to Florida Tech,
we won't talk about them again if they lose to Florida Tech. We'll just wait till
that's not even D1. It's not to sound so incredulous. I'm this close to declaring that the basketball segment's getting replaced by food ratings, Akshay. This close.
We did, Asa, a little bit of background. We did do that at one point. We did actually just stop talking about the football team and replace it with food reviews. At one point, I think this was 19 or 20. It was definitely post Citadel.
Oh yeah, Citadel would cause that.
Yeah, it was brain breaking. But please continue y'all's conversation.
I think to respond to that, like in comparison to past years under Pastner, like I actually think we were like fine in the out of conference. We won the games we should have won, lost the games we should have lost.
Yeah. So
I was feeling like fairly confident going into the ACC schedule, especially considering like the ACC is not good this year. But yeah, I mean, Jack, you and I were talking beforehand, and I think you said it well. Like, there's a major confidence issue on this team. And I think in past seasons, even last year when we weren't good, we still had guys that could like get a bucket when things were not going well.
Exactly.
There is
you were
not
one
that guy
you were
on this
one Mike
team.
DeVoe you were one Mike DeVoe 3 away from something, and then Usher just like becoming a party animal and wrecking the other team. So
Yeah.
it was always, there was that potential energy never went away, even if there were games where we were down by a lot, but it was there.
And something that we saw last year was like the freshman Miles Kelly and Debo come to mind, but like being just a hair off, and it was excusable, right? Miles Kelly's young. It's gonna click. He's gonna get to the speed of ACC play. And you have that kind of Mike DeVoe, Jordan Usher fallback last year, but this year there's not that. Like Miles, I mean, we saw it from game one when it was, all right, game's on the line, ball's in your hands, like score. Like it just doesn't seem like anybody's really ready to be that guy on the court. And based on how Rodney Howard was talking in last week's like end of week presser, like it doesn't seem like they have that emotional core in the locker room either, a la Jose. And of course, we're on year 2 of talking about Jose. And if we're talking about a confidence thing, I mean, it's Asa, don't expect you to come in and comment following up on this with women's basketball here, because that's, a little bit left turn. But I think the vibes were the same for the women, right? They won the games they should have won for the most part and lost the games they should have lost for the most part in the non-con. And it's just been a dry January between the two.
Good pun.
The women's team is at least getting better. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Oh, yeah. No,
I just, you're totally right. Let's talk a little bit about their next fixture, the men's next fixture, which is at Louisville on Wednesday. So tomorrow, when y'all hear this, the way that I described this to someone else was, this is like watching nuclear waste melt down. Both of these teams are terrible. Asa, any comment?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And we were talking about it, they haven't had like the truly terrible loss to a really bad team. This is the chance. It could happen.
I'm telling you.
I love the heel turn.
Well, we were saying on an episode a couple of weeks ago that the only reason that Tech is not dead last in the conference is because Louisville is having one of the worst high major basketball seasons in recorded history. This is a deplorable state of affairs in Louisville, Kentucky.
I truly have no clue what's going on there. And there's talented guys on that team. I think Eli Ellis and Brandon Huntley Hatfield I think they're both really good players. I mean, you need more than 2 guys, but it's not like this is a team that just is devoid of talent. So yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to the game. I truly don't know.
That's sicko behavior. That is sicko behavior,
absolutely.
sir.
Absolutely.
It
might be should encourage here.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be 45-50 final score.
Oh my God. I cannot wait.
Probably not, honestly. Both these teams are also very bad at defense, so who knows?
I asked my sister if she was going to go, and she just laughed. She was like, "No."
My goodness.
I was like, "Your 2 favorite teams, and no, not. Asa, my sister goes to Louisville, so that's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Asa, I'll ask you this, because Josh says he has more than 5 starters. Do you think he has more than 5 starters?
No, actually not at all. I don't think. I mean, we're super reluctant to play Javon Franklin. He's like a 6'6" center. He's pretty good, but you can't do that against 7-footers like Duke.
Nope.
And Rodney Howard at least is a large person. That's what he does well, is that he's big.
He's a large person, and yet we still put a larger person in. We still put a larger person in against Duke to even worse effect.
Well, that was, one of the most damning parts of the press conference. Not just him saying I've tried everything, but him saying we just looked small out there. But this is, what year is this under Passer? And these are his guys.
Oh,
this
God.
is the team
he
put together.
Well, and the thing there too is you cycle through some assistant coaches, sure, but at some point you got to call somebody on the Rolodex and fill the void. I mean, I miss the gang as much as the next guy, but I think Pastner's been Pastner the whole time. Where's the consistency next to him on the bench, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, the popular theory is that Eric Reveneau was the glue holding everything together, but I don't know if I buy that. But he definitely great track record of developing big men, which we could definitely use right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valid point. I mean, I mean, Lammers worked at what he was going to be without Eric. Who knows? But
Yeah.
if there is a single position, I would say please improve. It would be the center position, so you could at least make Martinov serviceable.
Oh, I don't.
Well,
If it was possible, if it was
Yikes.
possible. But
this
that's
is
where
not
we are
a
now.
well, this is not a popular take, but Moses Wright was like a no ranked like nobody when he came into the program.
Yeah.
Kind of similar to the type of big man we've got in the last year or two. But like he blossomed into a great guy because of great player development. And like, I mean, minus Reveneau, we haven't seen that. So I think it's pretty, at least maybe not the whole thing. I don't think it's really fair to anyone involved to say like, oh, it was all that one guy's fault. Like, write it off. But like, I mean, like, I don't want to be a hater because I love Moses and I appreciate the great memories, but he wasn't that good when he started. He was, like he looked raw and the whole team looks raw right now.
He had the potential, I think. Like,
Yeah.
he was coordinated. Yeah. He had like a fluidity to him that was not like Rodney Howard does not have that.
Nope.
He's got two left feet, two left hands. Like, and I don't want to like hate on Rodney Howard. I think he's like such a great guy. We were talking about his like him stepping into the press conference when Debo Coleman looked like he had just seen a ghost. So I do think he is like he's shown he's a leader on the team, and I think that's valuable in and of itself. I think Kyle Sturdivant as well, for how bad he's played, I think he still steps up as a leader in that locker room, or at least seems to in press conferences.
Asa, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you see a through line between Sturdivant and Todrick Jackson? Because I feel like I say that all the time, and I need to feel validated by somebody who's not Jack and Akshay because they hear my terrible takes every week.
Boy, do
I probably see a little more Todrick and like Davon Smith just for athleticism. I don't think Sturdivant's super like fast, like straight line speed. He's not much of a jumper though. But I'm with you. He's kind of got that like old man mid range game.
Yeah,
I like Sturdivant. I hope his year starts to turn around because I kind of like the way he plays. But if you're not like making shots, you're turning the ball over.
Yeah, it's and that's the point I think I was more going for was like, when the ball's in his hand, he's going to do something. And you're going to be like, wow, I just saw a thing, But, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But to focus on a positive, Davon Smith, I think, has been like incredible this year. The man might lead us in like every statistical category at the end of the year. And he's like 6 foot. So that's great for player development because he was not there even last year. He's turned into like an actually good point guard. He doesn't turn the ball over, makes good decisions. He can't shoot, which is troubling because he is like, I think he's the kind of person that has that mentality of like, he could take over and get us a bucket when we need one. But
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, if you can't shoot, you can't do that.
Nope.
Just put on the Jose Alvarado highlight tape. Watch this.
That's exactly what I was
thinking
of, though. That's exactly what I was thinking of because to me, like a more casual basketball guy, he projects the exact same way. He has a similar motor. I mean, I guess he plays a similar position. Y'all can comment on that a little bit more. He plays a similar role, and he has the same work rate, right? He gets up and down the court really quickly. He tries to take that initiative, but on the court and get a bucket when you really need it. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't work out. More often than not, it doesn't work out. But he does stuff, right? You want, for lack of a better term, he does things. He does stuff. And you want someone that has that in their locker and that can, in a game with only 5 people on the court offensively, you want someone that has that in their locker.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you need guys that can make things happen. And I'm hopeful that Miles Kelly can kind of turn around the slump he's having because I think he is that kind of guy. I don't know if Debo Coleman is. I think he's a great shooter, but I don't think he has like the ball skills to really create for himself. Yeah. So we need like really just Davon and Miles Kelly just have to have the ball in their hands like all the time. And if they can get better, maybe next year will be better. Who knows? I mean, this is getting way ahead of myself, but like, yeah, you never know what could happen next year. So I'm not going to completely write these guys off. Still going to watch every game. Probably going to be similar results every game, but just looking for improvement on like a individual player level, something to look forward to next year.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Asa, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for your insight into men's basketball. We'll let you go. I know you were something about your computer charger being broken, but we'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Let's flip over to the women's side of the Zelnak Center. We touched on them and teased a little bit about their results this week. They beat Clemson by 11 points, the highest scoring game for Georgia Tech women's basketball since the last home game versus Clemson. 5 players in double digits: Tony Morgan, Kayla Blackshear, Cameron Schwartz, Kara Dunn, and Nerea Hermosa, all with double-digit points. Mr. Purdy, walk me through the rest of the game. Walk me through some of these performances.
It was a wildly fun and good game. This was an act that we actually outplayed a team. Like this was a legit win. It wasn't Syracuse missing a bunch of shots that they should have made. This was a tough and scrappy Clemson team, as Coach Fortner put it, that they were able to take over from and just do the work that they needed to do. This was another game and seeing what Tony Morgan's future is going to be like, though. She's figuring out how to finish at the rim when she did well tonight, but this was the game where she figured out how to do assists. She had 12 on the night. She went 13, 12, and 5. This is like 2 games after she had a high point, high rebound game. So she's just taking over games where she needs to take it over right now, which is incredible to see. And I asked, like, is there like a triple-double-ish kind of feature here? So now she's like, yeah, it's out there. I like what I have now with her, but like, yeah, who the hell knows? No, they had just a very good game all around. They finally were making shots. Kayla went 9 of 13. Cam went 7 of 16. Tony went 4 of 9. Inez only played 3 minutes, and it was just kind of clear this game was just not going to be for her. And Nell just was like, all right, don't worry about tonight, because they were very scrappy, and Inez is not yet at the point to like use her really flowy rhythmic style against a team that's just ready to just punch you in the face. So that's how that went. And Hermosa played 30 minutes and looked like her old self. Who knew? It's still there.
Yeah.
The caveat that Jake always offers when we play Clemson, when Tech plays Clemson in women's basketball, is that playing Clemson in women's basketball is eating a hit in RPI. Would you say that's still true, Mr. Grant?
I absolutely would. I don't think that Clemson is a particularly stellar program year over year. That being said, I think they've improved, certainly. But I got a saying that I think Kyle Schwarber used to say all the time on the Cubs: but you should never leave Cincinnati without a home run. I feel similarly for playing Clemson in women's basketball, or volleyball for that matter, and winning, right? You should never leave that game without a win. And to Nell's credit, it is worth pointing out that she has never lost to Clemson in, I believe this is now the 8th game that they've played against Clemson, maybe 9th. They are undefeated under Nell against Clemson. We certainly have not played another ACC team with that frequency over those years, over the last 4 years. But I would be shocked if there was another team that we even got 4 or 5 and a perfecto on. It's Clemson, right? Like they're an improving program. Don't want to hate on them. They almost beat us like twice last year. Like,
oh, those are both near
win the winnable
misses.
games. This is a winnable game, right?
Absolutely.
Is that fair? I don't know.
Absolutely. No. I totally get your meaning. Their next fixture is NC State. That is Thursday, February 2nd at 8 p.m. I assume that is an ACC Network extra feature.
Something like that.
Something along those lines. NC State, let's look up the ESPN rankings on NC State, shall we?
They're still good. This is going to be a more comfortable stretch of the schedule going forward, because we have Clemson again really soon. So I think we'll actually get a couple 3 wins like in the next 5 or so. Would be my hope. Not saying it'll happen, but I think this is outside this NC State game. I like where we're going. Also, it's NC State at home, which is always better. Yeah, we got Miami, then Clemson, and then Pitt in the next after
God,
that. So there's shot for win. There's room for wins there. I'll also note that one more the scheduled part reminded me about what Josh Pastner said about the men, that in the 11 games they played, they've had the hardest set of 11 in the entire ACC, which makes sense because they still haven't played Louisville yet, and they played them twice. So in
Boston
terms of
College,
just like,
for that matter.
but or Boston, yeah. So like they've had the roughest stretch in terms of what the schedule gave them. I don't think that excuses the fact that they lost to Notre Dame, and he doesn't excuse that either. But still, that's
I just want to point out that NC State is ranked 15th in the nation. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th in the ACC at 6-4. They're 16-5 overall. This is an absurd women's basketball conference this year.
Is.
I would like to addendum my previous comment about some past results for us. Clemson, it was the 8th win against them under Nell. Florida State is the next closest with 5. Wake Forest is also 5. So, like I said, Clemson is a team that Nell Fortner has handled pretty well throughout her career.
Fair enough. Like we said, NC State, that's Thursday, February 2nd at 8 p.m. We will talk about the football schedule release live and commit a rights violation after this short break.
As always, this podcast is brought to you by the good folks over at Section 103. Section 103, as you know, the best place to get Georgia Tech apparel. We got some classic performance apparel, but we've also got some great throwback type stuff as well. Looking ahead to baseball and softball season, it is worth pointing out that there's some great baseball and softball options out there. We've got the Jackets script with the GT in white and also in baseball sleeves, which are a great way to prepare for baseball season. But my personal favorite is the homage with the Tech lettering of the full zip-up hoodie. I think I've mentioned it like 8 times because I wear it all the time, every time it comes out of the wash. As always, you can get free shipping on orders over $70 every day. You can find them at Section 103 on Twitter and at section103.com on the interwebs.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland for Monday, January 30th. While we wait for the football schedule release on ACC Network, let's avoid committing a rights violation for just a little longer. Let's talk about men's tennis. They were up at Stanford for ITA Kickoff weekend. That is number 18 Stanford by the coaches poll, I believe. They took Stanford to the brink and started out really well, didn't they, Mr. Brandt?
Yeah, they did. I mean, honestly, I don't want to sound like astonished, but I was kind of surprised. Stanford's a really good program. They are ranked number 18 in the country. Interesting with the hosting dynamics. Usually it's top 15, but ITA versus, all that stuff kind of comes out in the wash. They started out strong with a win in doubles. It was a win on courts 1 and 2. That means Martin and McDaniel were your winners 6-4. And Chopra and Shokri were your winners on court 2. That was 6-3. The match did come down to the last singles court, I think is the right way to talk through that. And it's tough, right? Because Georgia Tech did rattle off a couple more wins in singles. Those 2 wins were 2 setters, Chopra and Sakdev. They both won 6-3, 6-2. The longest court was Shokri and Rajesh from Stanford on court 6. That was your 3-setter. You also had McDaniel losing in tiebreak, Martin losing in 2, and who am I forgetting? McKinney losing into 6-3, 6-2 on court 5. So really tough fight all the way around, but Tech did come up a little bit short in the end.
It's a really valiant effort, especially juxtaposed against their game earlier, or their match yesterday, where they unfortunately, actually, I think it was earlier today, where they fell to Pepperdine, who is ranked 20th, I believe, in the coaches poll.
It was a really tough region that they went to. Georgia Tech had the ability to draft into a specific region, and it was A&M, Pepperdine, and Stanford, all very well-regarded teams. Nothing like crazy top tier, which is kind of the logic between being able to draft as the 4th position into a tournament like that. You really guarantee yourself 2 great matches, but Tech came up a little bit short in the second one as well.
I believe the final on that one was 1-4 or 4-1, depending on how you interpret your scores. Let's move over to the north end, or I guess the east end of the Bay Area, northeast end, something like that. The Bay is very large. The women's tennis team was in Berkeley to face off versus Cal.
That's the one team from the region they didn't actually play. So I'm going to actually a little bit, there. They did play San Diego in the first match, and then they were paired up against Pepperdine, the loser of the Cal Pepperdine 1-4 in the second match. I will say that did just foreshadow their results. They lost to San Diego 4-1. Tough result there in doubles. They fell 6-4 and 6-2. That would be Carol Lee and Kate Sherbrue actually pairing up with another number 53 ranked team. So there must be a tie there somewhere in the rankings, or this site just has it over incorrectly. But I choose to believe that it's a tie, and it was a really well matched court. We also had, like I said, Bilchev and Cruz losing on court 2. Which was deciding the doubles point. In terms of singles, we did see wins from Carol Lee, who is up to number 10 in the country on court 1. That was 6-4, 6-2. That was less successful the rest of the way down the slate, if you will, with Mahak Jain losing on court 3, Rosie Garcia-Gruos losing 6-1, 6-2 on court 5, and Ruth Marsh losing 6-3, 6-2 in that order, more or less, other than the win, which came second, deciding things. At the time play was suspended, Kylie Bilchev and Alejandra Cruz were both leading. So potential for a 4-3, but, just came up a little bit short. Maybe the margin looks a little bit cleaner if a couple of those go a little bit faster, but tough showing. And then they moved on to play Princeton. Sorry, I've got a friend who goes to Princeton now after going to Pepperdine, so they're like in my head, and I'm all frazzled. So
Pepperton.
Sure, let's go with that. Orange, the orange.
Pepperton sounds like a rejected name for Fansville.
That was good.
Tough weekend for the tennis programs, but if we flip over to the swim programs, they had a much better weekend, wouldn't you say, Mr. Purdy?
I would indeed. It helps when you schedule Garder-Webb.
Look, you're the one that brought up strength of schedule. I did not say anything. I'm just leaving it out there.
That's
at least they're D1.
They are D1.
Christopher Newman is not D1.
They look to have it. They look to have a good time while they were there. It was also the senior meet, so they got to have their whole little celebration beforehand. I think I've been to one meet in the past. I know I've been to at least one. I didn't see the band there. The band was there for this.
They always go to senior day.
And Buzz was there. I was under the impression that Buzz was banned from the CRC, and I was told by Buzz himself that he was banned from the CRC, and yet he was there. So I don't know. I don't know what to say there. I'll say that the mascot was there. We had a fist bump. He seemed to have a fun time there. He did not go on the pool deck. I'll note that. He was just in the stands. He did not go on the pool deck. But still, very curious about that. Everyone swam. I don't think there was any B cuts. Garder-Webb was not the kind of team that it seemed so they would need to just go out and all out brawl. So there was no impressive times posted, but it was still a fun time to be there and see everyone go. A lot of the other fellow student athletes like to go to these meets as well. So I saw a decent amount of the volleyball team there and other folks hanging out before the Duke game.
Yep, some interesting events for Carson Newman, and Gardner-Webb lets them shake things up a little bit in terms of who's swimming what, just a little bit, not too much. I will say Buzz had a busy week because on Tuesday I had to explain to him what my company did, and he can't use words because he was at the career fair. I was like, "This is great. This is a lot of fun. I definitely feel like this is a success." No, but hopefully he applies.
Mr. Grant, track and field.
Yeah. Track and field, both of them. We had some good medley results again. The distance medley, I think, is one of the most interesting events in track, basically the concept is everyone runs a different length of event. I only ever saw that in the pool once when I was swimming at one meet, and I always thought that was an interesting idea. So it's cool that they do it a lot more in the indoor track season for college. But the men and the women up at the Bob Pollock invite both place second in the event. It's kind of long because it's a bunch of different distances. So you're right about 9:50 and 11:34 for the respective teams and their finishes. I'm pulling up the teams that were there because I forgot to write those down, but there were quite a bit. You had some professionals because track meets in college are weird. There's like Adidas athletes and stuff like that always show up, but quite a few folks were down there. You had Bama, Charleston Southern, Charlotte, Cincy, Clemson, Coastal, Elon, FIU, Furman State, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, High Point, Kennesaw State, Liberty, Mississippi State, NC State, couple more professional teams. Rutgers, a school called Southern Wesleyan, which I think is like the next town over from Clemson, but definitely not D1, Tennessee, and Wake. So really a pretty good showing overall. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And then there was a couple other key results from Saturday, the second day of competitions. John Watkins placed second in the men's triple jump, 15:33 there. And then Shanti Papacosta placed third. I think that rounds out all of our, podium finishers. There's a number of good finishes in general, but in terms of 1, 2, 3, that's about what we got.
Let's go through some other news items. We know GT Hockey had a couple games this weekend. Let's start there.
Okay, so they played. Who is this? Tennessee. They played Tennessee twice in Knoxville. On the 28th, they lost 4-2. On the 29th, they won 6-3. So in aggregate, they won 8-7. Because this is soccer.
One thing that I note about just college club hockey teams in general is all of them have really great logos. Is that just me, or am I just the sucker for like?
They have more wiggle room. I guess they got the license to use Buzz and then make it look good.
I will say goals scored by Tech in the first game, the 4-2 loss, both came from Maxim Chachkin and Andrew Boner. Those were both in the second. Tech went down 3-2 during the second. No goals were scored in the first. And then Tennessee put one away halfway through the third to make it a game, or to put away the game, I guess is a better way to say that. In the second game, it was 1-1 after the first. Goals from Connolly and Tennessee's King. Tech added 2 to Tennessee's 1 in the second. I believe the Tennessee goal came first, though. So Tennessee, I think, led briefly. Both of those goals in the second were from John McAvilly. He rounded things out for a hat trick in the third, as Tech scored 3 in the third to Tennessee's 1 to really put everything away. Other goals by Kyungmin Kim and Maxim Chachkin Chachilkin. Man, sorry, doing this on the fly, but hat trick for McAvee. So good to see there in terms of closing out the weekend with a win. They'll be outdoors for their next game. Jack, I take it you're still unsuccessful at finding tickets to that.
Oh, I haven't even looked. There was only 400 available. I don't think there'll be any more coming available for that.
Okay, so I have to look up this pavilion. It's called CC Foundry Pavilion. It's in the expansion of the Classic Center. It's not really outdoors. It's it's just a skating rink with a roof on it. They're just not even a skating rink. It's just a venue with a roof on it that has an area which they can put ice down and skate on.
Interesting.
I'm declaring this fraudulent.
That's only a semi-outdoor game. You can't see the sky.
I'm sure they'll cancel it thanks to your opinion here. So good job.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I really hope they do, just to commit to the bit. That is their next game. That is February 4th, if my zoomed-in reading of the schedule is right. At the end of the month, next month, is the CHS playoffs. So busy month coming up for them. We have the first month on the football side of the schedule. So let's talk about that, unless, Mr. Grant, you have any other news items you'd like to stall with?
News items? No. Things that I could randomly plug in and spit out silly facts about Georgia Tech sports? Yes.
Well, I was thinking you'd want to talk about Emma Calf and being named eighth best catcher in D1 softball by D1 softball.
I really don't have a lot to add to that. I'm sure that they've really looked at all the folks and ranked them well. I mean,
I put that in there.
There's so many teams, you know, like I don't get how you could be like, you know, we're really just needling one a little bit ahead of the rest. It's kind of the same thing I feel like when like D1 baseball is predicting their 16 regional hosts this early. It's like, how do you know that? Like, you got to play 55 baseball games until that happens. Like,
don't you love it when media outlets put out a top 25 minutes after the national championship game? It's the exact same concept.
Emma Kaup is awesome, and it's great to see her getting recognized. Whether or not she's 6th, 8th, or 10th, I'm not wise enough to know that. I watch a lot of softball, and I still wouldn't know how to go about ranking that.
I would use some analytics, Mr. Grant. Have you considered that?
No, I explicitly ruled that out.
Put a nice black X mark through analytics.
Numbers, cross out the numbers.
Take those records and throw them off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly what we do here at Georgia Tech, and that sets us apart.
The numbers lie, of course. Let's double back to the football schedule. Let's talk about the part that we do have and hope that the ACC network gets their act together for the last 2/3 of it. The white and gold game, or the gold and white game, is April 15th. That is a Saturday, I believe. That is not Masters weekend.
Yes, that is a Saturday.
It is a Saturday. It's at 1 p.m. It's not Masters weekend. It's not right after rush hour. I think this is a really good change if you're interested in coming to campus and spending some time with the team.
I am a little sad that it's not lined up to a baseball game or something like that, because can't really make it a super Saturday. But, you know, if there's nothing else going on, maybe even better, right? It's not taking people away from baseball or taking people away from spring game. You know, they just pick one or the other, or not, they don't have to pick one or the other. They can just kind of roll with it. I didn't check if there was softball. Jack, did you see if there's softball in town that weekend?
Yeah, there's nothing that weekend. That was the only drawback. That was the sad part. It's even Atlanta United's not playing in here that weekend. So like it is, that will be the one sporting event you can go to in the city of Atlanta. I think even the Braves aren't here.
The Braves are. They're playing a World Series. Wait, this is
what are you looking at? The World Series.
Hold on. No. World Series rematch is what I was going to say.
The Braves will be playing the World Series
in April. Oh my goodness!
It was a World Series rematch, but it was March 15th, not April 15th. I'm now looking at April 15th. The Braves are in Kansas City.
Yes. Okay.
Softball is at Pitt that weekend. Baseball is at VT. Atlanta United is in Toronto. So
there you go.
Yeah, very
softball at Pitt. 2 thumbs up. Baseball at VT. Kind of scary. Kind of scary. Softball, if they were at VT, very scary, you know.
Atlanta United at Toronto, it's like 1 thumb up and 1 thumb down because goodness, no one knows how that'll go.
I haven't even thought about AL Central baseball. I couldn't tell you about the Royals' expectations, but
the Royals re-signed Grinke today.
That's a problem for next month. I got to figure out college baseball and softball.
Let's do this. You know? Do you think people are going to tailgate the spring game? Like, you got the morning.
They tried last time.
On a Thursday?
I mean, we've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, that was like athletics student tailgate. No, we did tailgate one year.
The 2019 one, we did. The 2019 one, we did tailgate before, even though it was on a Friday.
I was going to say, when I was football chair, we did a tailgate too. What am I thinking? Duh. Whoops.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm losing it in my old age, you know.
Let me give you the first month of the season straight up live from ACC Network. Friday, September 1st, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium versus Louisville. That is 1, a conference game, and 2, the Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Saturday, September 9th, the true home opener versus South Carolina State. Saturday, September 16th at Ole Miss. Saturday, September 23rd at Wake Forest. That is one of Georgia Tech's the permanent opponents.
Yes.
Yeah.
The permanent opponents. And then the last game of the month, Saturday, September 30th versus Bowling Green. Mr. Grant, you have the con.
I'd like to kind of frame all of these before we kind of roll into the takes. Kind of pulling up what we've done most recently against all the schools. First up, Louisville. We have played Louisville twice in history. We are 2-0 against Louisville. Jeff Collins getting a win at home. That was the Jahmyr Gibbs vaults a guy game, and then beating Louisville on the road on a Friday night in Louisville in Paul Johnson's last season in 2018. That was, I think, a Tobias Oliver game, but Tech won like 66-31. And
it was a very funny game.
I think that's the Paul Johnson, Spencer Hall, I Burn Houses column. I think that was Spencer that wrote
versus Brian Van Gorder.
Yes, Brian Van Gorder. Yes. Good old Brian Van Gorder and Bobby Petrino. What an iconic duo. Like I said, Georgia Tech 2-0 all-time against Louisville. That means 2-game win streak, 1-0 at home, 1-0 on the road. I don't have a lot of other interesting things that jump off the page there, but Louisville is in an interesting spot, and I'm sure we'll do an in-depth schedule preview later in the year, but with the whole Jeff Brom replacing Scott Satterfield kind of thing, I mean, this is a game that gives a lot of implication. Say what you will about it being a Friday night. You guys can talk about that. But, I mean, it's starting off the year with a bang, right?
I mean, it is the Friday night Mercedes-Benz Chick-fil-A kickoff game. It is basically the first – I mean, I'm sure there's a game on Thursday, but it's like the big one, right? It's like the big game of the first big game of the year, if you want to be generous that way. There was one other note about what the Monday game is, but I now can't find it.
Oh, I never saw that. But either way, I'll note Tech's done a good job about like getting their notable. They're getting their Mercedes-Benz games on the early ones, like at least on off nights that aren't Saturdays. Both 2 Mondays and a Friday now, and then not counting the UNC game, which is mid-year. So they're getting themselves a decent national TV slot every year, which is good to see. Which I think was kind of more the point about the Mercedes-Benz thing. Is like that's gonna do the trick to do that anyways, and use the Chick-fil-A kickoff game powers that be to their advantage, which they probably couldn't do on their own.
I will say, I mean, it's better to have this as a kickoff game instead of a normal, like just a random conference game in the middle of the year.
The first game will always feel like an event, regardless of the fact. So you blow it out, get more people there. You mean arguably that you can get more fans to go to these games if you keep doing it at MBS for that first game than you could fit in Bobby Dodd. That's just theoretical, though. It probably won't ever be the case, but
the thing that bothers me about this setup, well, I mean, there's a bunch of things that bother me about this setup, so I'll try to keep this short, is that it depends on how they structure the attendance for this one, because the last two of the 5 Mercedes-Benz games in this contract have been reduced capacity, Atlanta United capacity. And if this is going to continue to be that on national television, I have some problems.
I think that's why they maybe are going to shift to the Chick-fil-A method if they can keep doing it that way, because then they can have a full stadium each time and not have the Atlanta United branding in the midst of a Georgia Tech football game and have a colored scheme mix up.
Yeah, because then you just end up with the same problem as
year,
State.
Right?
No, they didn't put the curtains down last year.
Oh, that's
it looked worse.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right. I was there. I should know.
It looked much worse because they didn't put the curtains down.
Yeah,
it's a whole thing. I don't think that there's much to be said about South Carolina State. Ole Miss.
I have something to say about South Carolina State.
Ooh.
Because this is an inclusive podcast, and we've played them before. Do you guys know our all-time record against South Carolina State?
If it's not undefeated, I will be severely disappointed.
It's delightfully 1-0. We beat them 41-10 in front of 52,000 people at home in 2010.
I was hoping it was like we played them in 1935 or something, and it was a 2-2 tie or something crazy like that.
Fair enough.
Ole Miss on the 16th. I think a lot of ink is being spilled on Ole Miss and their transfer portal shenanigans. I don't know if they're going to say shenanigans, but they're really rebuilding that roster via the portal.
Including some of our guys.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin's got something cooking. We'll figure out if it's good or bad, I guess. Wake Forest. We talked about Wake Forest originally when the schedule concept came out. Are you what? You want to do the Ole Miss? The schedule?
Yeah, I want to do the Ole Miss thing.
He's got a bid for all these games, buddy.
I didn't handle all this data by hand, entering it for us to never use it. Are you kidding me? All
Look,
time, we are 2-3 against Ole Miss. Sir.
That is the unsung hero-ness of being someone that works with data. I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's 2-3 all time. The 2 wins were both by Bobby Dodd, 1946, 24-7, 1952, also 24-7. Ole Miss was trounced on the way to a Georgia Tech national championship. That attendance was 80,187. That was at a neutral site. We'll unbox that later.
I was be like, what did they build? Do people watching at the varsity, like on top of the varsity for that game or something?
Well, Jake will remind us probably in a second here that before all of the renovations that forced Tech to close out the bowl or box off the bowl, they were seating well over 60,000, if not like 70, 80,000 in the bowl.
I wouldn't call it well over, but that was apologies to the corrections there. That was a bowl game, not at Bobby Dodd. It was a neutral site. So, whoops, my bad. And then 3-0 or 0-3 since then. Those matchups that we've played since then. Again, 2 of them are bowl games, 1971 and 2013, and then a 2022 42-0 loss at Bobby Dodd. We have never played, fun fact, in Oxford.
Really? This is the first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, there's been a lot of ink spilled about how Bobby Dodd in public stated that he would never set foot in Mississippi for some of these games. And Jake specifically has spilled a lot of digital ink on this, I believe. So, Jake, give us the very short TLDR on why.
Yeah, hold on. I'm looking at this now. It was the 1952 Sugar Bowl, which was the 1953 Sugar Bowl. There we go. So it was a national championship season. My bad. I got the wires crossed because I started doubting myself. Anyways, Bobby Dodd didn't like to play in Mississippi. Long line of Georgia Tech coaches that did not want to travel, starting with John Heisman. He very famously made a bunch of his money by gate receipts, hence why he did not like to travel and wanted everyone to come to Atlanta where their facilities were better. Anyways, Bobby Dodd basically didn't think that the Mississippi schools were all that competitive. It was not easy to reach them and not worth his time, right? If you're going to be taking a loss, sports writers don't like that, especially in the years where their votes get you your national championship. But it makes for interesting results when your conference opponents see you as somebody who never even wants to deign to play them. For example, that 1952 year we played Florida, Tulane, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Bama, Georgia, and Ole Miss. So very interesting slate, and Ole Miss only coming via the bowl game. Mississippi State similarly rarely played. Kind of rarely played LSU, Kentucky, Florida as well. It was really just the Vandy, Tulane, Auburn, and Bama. Both of those were usually in Birmingham, so another big city, and then sometimes Knoxville for Tennessee. So really you can see it kind of lining up with your bigger southern cities, and that is why we've never been to Oxford. The Mississippi schools are a big reason why we were not back in the conference in the 80s, late 70s when Georgia Tech attempted to do that before joining the ACC.
Speaking of ACC foes, Wake Forest. I remember we had a lot of consternation that it was Wake Forest out of the Research Triangle that was picked to be one of Tech's permanent rivals instead of someone like Duke, who Tech has had a long and storied history with. What history do we have against Wake Forest, sir?
Well, you don't want to just write the Duke thing off. I mean, I'll die on that sword a little bit. That's our longest unbroken series now that the UGA series went by the wayside due to COVID and that interruption there. So stinks to lose that too, especially so hot on the heels of the severing of the UGA series. All time against Wake Forest, Georgia Tech and Wake have squared off 31 times. 18 of those times are at Bobby Dodd Stadium. 12 on the road. Once was neutral. Georgia Tech all time is 23-8 against Wake. Pretty slanted towards the Jackets. That is a 742 win percentage. Tech is 14-4 against Wake at home, 9-3 on the road. So fairly successful and really shockingly similar win percentages in both of those. Wake has been Tech's homecoming game 4 times, most recently in 2017. Yes, 2017. That was a night game on the Flats. 25 of those games, while Georgia Tech and Wake shared the ACC. Georgia Tech is, I'd say, fairly consistent in playing them for 2 decent stretches. Once in the I guess the first golden age of Georgia Tech football, those late teens, so 1916 through like 19-ish. And then when the ACC was only 8 or 9 teams, we did play them basically every year. Siri, go away. That happened again this week. Jeez. Basically played them annually from about 1981 up until the conference split into 2 divisions. Have really only played them once since 2010. I will say Tech is also on a 3-game win streak, so 2009, 2010, and 2017. Tech's last loss to Wake Forest. Do you gents know what it is?
No.
Oh, no, I know what it is. It's the 06
it's the
ACC
title
championship
game.
game.
Title game. Oh, man. That's right.
Yep.
What was that, 6'3", 6'9"?
Something like that.
6'9", with Calvin Johnson on the roster. No touchdowns were scored by either team.
I have a headache. I have a massive
in
headache.
Jacksonville too. Ugh.
They played that
The
not in Charlotte?
The ACC championship game was very it
was
wandered
nomadic
around for a while. Yeah, Jacksonville, Tampa. We played Clemson in Tampa in 2009 when we won.
Originally, the thought was to have cities bid on it, and then they realized that there were very few cities that actually wanted to bid on it, so they just went permanent site in Charlotte.
Makes sense.
Let's talk a little bit about Bowling Green. The last time we played them, I remember, was in, 2018? Mr. Grant, record versus Bowling Green, please.
Want to know?
Oh, that was the first year. Okay.
63-17 win. That was our first, when we played them, our first game against a team from Ohio in like a really long time. Don't quote me on the timeline, but Georgia Tech hasn't made it up north all that much. So very interesting to see us dip back in the MAC for, I guess, the 3rd time in 6 seasons. 3rd time in, 6 seasons.
Let's move over to October. We only have 2 dates confirmed right now. That is the first being at Miami on the 7th. Miami, of course, we have a storied history with, wouldn't you say, Mr. Grant?
I'd say so. Very interesting that Georgia Tech has kind of danced around being even with them the last couple seasons. It's 13-14 all time, so 27 games. Interestingly, not as much as Wake Forest. It's mostly due to Miami being a more recent add to the conference. I know that with us playing them annually, they kind of take up a much larger headspace, so it's a little bit surprising sometimes to see that number's only 27. The first Miami Georgia Tech game came in 1955, and then in 1964, in the waning days of the SEC for Bobby Dodd. Those were both wins. Miami's first win against Tech came in 67, and then in 68. You can ask Bud Carson how those 2 went. Tech rattled off 4 in a row in the 70s. Then they took a long break until they played in 99. That was a neutral siter again. And then they've played uninterrupted, other than the COVID cancellation late in the game, if you will, in the 2020 season. Been, like I said, back and forth the previous couple of years. Georgia Tech did beat Miami in 18 and 19. 18 was a night game, home game. Very interesting. 2019 was the Presley Harvin touchdown game. And then, that 2017 game is kind of a sliding doors moment, at least for me. Miami wins by 1 after screen pass after screen pass after screen pass.
Double screen.
They were a top 10 team that year, and one play goes differently against them, one play goes differently against Tennessee. You're looking at a Georgia Tech that makes a bowl, beats a ranked team at the time, maybe both of those, and goes 7-4, and maybe things work out differently from there, but no real sense in dwelling on the past. Both of the last 2 games were a 33-30 loss in Coral Gables and a 35-14 loss at home.
Bye on the 14th, 10-21, the 21st of October is versus Boston College. Boston College really threw Georgia Tech for a loop in 21, wouldn't you say?
I'd say so. It's very interesting to kind of see how they've gone since then. Boston College, I'd actually say, kind of handled us pretty thoroughly in both games of the COVID and post-COVID seasons. We played them back-to-back years there. It was a 48-27 loss in 20, a 41-30 loss in 21. I wouldn't say that the second game was as close as it seemed, and that was kind of the straw that was breaking the camel's back there at the end of the 2021 season. That and the Virginia Tech game were both pretty tough. I will say all time Georgia Tech and Boston College have played 11 times. Tech is 7-4. The most recent win was the first that I saw as a Tech student. That would be the game in Dublin, Ireland. That was a 17-14 win for Tech. Tech also won the two before that in 08 and 2012, losing to Boston College in 98 and 07. Pretty sporadic series, even with them being in the conference. Again, have only played 11 times and only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those have come since Boston College joined the conference about 10 years ago, or about 20 years ago. So certainly a team that's kind of, they pop onto the radar every couple of years, but I think that's one of the merits, as we see here and kind of with Wake as well, of, being able to play every team every 2 years, right?
It's very interesting how Boston College is going to look this season, especially because Phil Dracovic is now at Pitt, going back to his ancestral homeland. Jeff Hafley, in general, was on the hot seat. And they lost that entire offensive line 2 years ago to the draft and just haven't recovered. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be interesting how they've utilized the portal and high school recruiting to basically rebuild that entire offense. I haven't really kept up with how things are going on that side. But I mean, they'll have what is that? The 7th game of the season for Tech, and they'll have at least 7-8 weeks to figure it out before they have to come to Atlanta. Let's move on to the 28th. You can tell that we're stalling for the last couple games to be released here. 28th versus UNC. I believe that is also at home. Historic record, please.
Yeah, your historic record against UNC is the most of any of the teams that we've seen so far. That's 57 total games. It's 32, 22, and 3. Probably the most famous of those ties coming in 1990. That was somewhat by the skin of their teeth, saving Georgia Tech's perfect season with Scott Sisson field goal, keeping them around in there. Georgia Tech has played North Carolina in a number of stints, kind of similar to Wake in that regard. The main ones that come to mind are 1915 and 16, and then again in the 20s. That was actually, how many of Georgia Tech's 4 claimed national championships have featured a game against North Carolina?
All but 1.
Good guess.
All but
Jack,
2.
You got one? All but 2. Jack is correct.
Hey.
You're welcome, everyone. We also beat them 20-7 in 1928. After that stretch in the 20s and 30s, Tech did get them a couple times in the 40s, a one-off in 74, and then have played them essentially every year since joining the ACC. Tech started that stretch with 4 straight L's, 80 through 84, and then since then has been a little bit more consistent, including a 98 through 2013 stretch of 16 games, because you're inclusive of each end, that featured only 2 losses. There was an interruption during the 2020 season, but Tech is, interestingly, 4 of their last 5 featuring wins over North Carolina, including, I guess that's inclusive of 6 seasons because they didn't see each other in 2020.
The first game of November is at Virginia. We've gone to Charlottesville a couple of times. The most notable instance of going to Charlottesville, I think, is still that 90 game, which got a massive intro from CBS. I think it was CBS at the time, and ended in Scott Sisson taking out number 1 ranked UVA with a last-second field goal.
Yeah, this is another one of those that's been very consistent since we joined the ACC in The early 1980s, I believe, we started our series with Virginia in 82 because they slowly ramped Tech into the ACC. It wasn't just a turn on the switch because there were a number of independent contracts that are out there. So again, if anyone's taking notes at home, Tech was not eligible for the ACC title in football until 83, I believe, which other sports coming along. In 79, Georgia Tech all-time is 21-22-1 against Virginia for a total of 44. They are 26-17 at home and 18, or sorry, not 26-17, 17-9 at home for 13-1 on the road. Charlottesville, a bit of the boogeyman there. Virginia, again, notably 1990, that field goal to win it all. Georgia Tech was at one point 2 games ahead of Virginia in the all-time standings, but has since lost the last 3 in a row, with the last win coming in that very exciting and previously noted Virginia game, a 30-27 win in Paul Johnson's final season. The 3 losses in 19, 21, and 22 were a 33-28 loss in 19, 48-40 in 21, and then 22 was a 16-9 loss on a Thursday night under Coach Bredke.
We know what the end of the season holds. We don't have to talk about that one on Thanksgiving weekend, but we do know the other 2 opponents in some capacity on the 11th of November and the 18th of November, excuse me, I have that wrong in my sheet, are Clemson and Syracuse. We know a lot about Clemson. We've talked a lot about Clemson today and its various other sports programs. We've seen Syracuse a couple times recently. Tell me a little bit more about them and Tech's recent performance there.
Well, you faked me out there because I pulled up Clemson first, but all-time against Syracuse, couple notable games. It is a 3-1 record. 0-1 and 0-4 were both neutral siters. That's the old Kickoff Classic that used to happen in East Rutherford. I know for 0-1, I don't know 0-4 off the top of my head, but I'm sure that if I scrolled to the right in my sheet, I would find out. That loss against Syracuse was a otherwise winless team in 2020. That was a 37-20 loss, the only road game that Tech has played at Syracuse. Rounding out those 4 games, that 2013 win was a rude awakening for Syracuse as they joined the conference that season, and a 56-0 shellacking at the hands of Paul Johnson, as as he's one to do against the unsuspecting teams. That gives Tech an all-time 1-0 mark at home, 0-1 on the road, and 2-0 at neutral sites.
I remember that game when they were winless and beat us because I got invited on the ACC or the Sirius XM ACC Network's radio show, because they did like a student journalist thing on the Friday before a game. They always pick a game, so they picked us for that week. I don't know why they picked us for that game, for that week, whatever. And I was so cocky on that radio show. I'm like, we looked all right. It was still early enough in the season. Syracuse had shown nothing. Like, I went back and watched tape with like their game before. And I was like, they're awful. How are we gonna lose this game? Like, I was completely
we just
confident.
Beaten Florida State too, right?
Yeah, like we were good. Yeah. It was after that Florida State win. I was that my radio appearances so far have not netted us anything good, because then I went on it the next year and we lost that 48-40 game to Boston College.
Jack, that's tough. That's tough.
Jack, we can't let you go on the radio anymore.
I will note that the other neutral site game was a bowl, so that was a postseason game, not the kickoff, but the one was in East Rutherford. I do know that.
Give me the notables for Clemson.
Notables for Clemson, those are surprising to a lot of casual fans, I would say. Even though we have not beaten Georgia Tech, even though we have not beaten Clemson,
definitely haven't done that
since I became a fan. I remember one of the big things when I first showed up at Tech was, we've won 10 years in a row at home. So we got them at home this week. So it'll be a win. That was a Thursday night shellacking at the hands of the eventual national champions. That puts Georgia Tech at a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight losses to Clemson. We have played them legitimately every year since 1983. They were one of the last ACC teams to roll onto our schedule, which is interesting because they are certainly who we would deem a historic rival. They are certainly in our top 5 amongst, actually top 4, Auburn, Clemson, UGA and Duke all time. That is 88 total games, 51 wins for Georgia Tech, 35 losses, and 2 ties. Tech is 43-16-2 against them at home for a 721 win percentage and 304 win percentage on the road. That is 7-16. They are 1-3 all time in neutral site games. And yes, I did count the Mercedes-Benz game as a neutral site game last year.
It's not a home game.
I know that they count it as a home game, but it is not at Bobby Dodd Stadium, so I will not be counting it as a home game, and no one can make me. Interestingly, Georgia Tech has played Clemson 12 times, not just the week of Thanksgiving, but on Thanksgiving itself. Auburn is another one that Tech used to end the season with. Clemson has been the homecoming game 5 times, including one recently. Their one postseason matchup coming in the 2009 previously mentioned ACC championship game in Tampa. I have one more fun fact that I will note, and that is that the most recent win was a 28-6 margin. Usually holding Clemson to only 6 points is great results. We held them to 14-21 and certainly came close and was a much better showing than 77-3 the year before. This year, of course, everyone recalls that we lost to them 41-10 in the opener and looked pretty good for 3 quarters. So, hopefully we can make it, another 4-quarter game like we did 2 years ago. Tech hasn't been completely outmatched in every game we played against them, but they've certainly been lots to handle sometimes.
Do y'all want another I made a mistake story and led us to lose?
Absolutely.
Sure. My first ever game in a press box was 73-7.
Ooh.
Yep.
My Clemson disaster story involves a big golden whistle, but we don't have enough time for that right now.
I think we've already told that story on the podcast at some point. Someone's just going to have to find it for us. We did get some schedule updates as we were recording here. That Clemson game will be on the 11th of November. That is at Clemson. We're waiting to hear when Cuse is. Obviously no time, but the date. It should be the week of the 18th of November. We're just waiting to see if that's a Thursday or a Saturday. But yeah, that is your schedule. To go over it once more in full detail. Friday, September 1st versus Louisville in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Saturday, September 9th, versus South Carolina State. That is a home game. At Ole Miss on September 16th. At Wake Forest on September 23rd. Home versus Bowling Green on September 30th. At Miami on October 7th. Bye week on October 14th. Versus Boston College at home on October 21st. UNC at home on October 28th. At Charlottesville against Virginia on November 4th. At Clemson on November 11th. And then at some point during the week of the 18th of November versus Syracuse. I think that should be a home game,
I think that'd
if
be
I'm
home
not
as well.
mistaken.
That should be home game.
And then Thanksgiving weekend, whatever. Gentlemen.
We didn't learn a lot there, right? Because we already knew who we were playing.
The only notable thing was that the Louisville game got moved up a day. That from we probably thought it would have been a Saturday game, maybe Monday, but who knows? Hey,
I personally learned that this entire schedule release show thing is stupid.
Remember what Mr. Key said, that we're going to work 365 days a year to beat an interstate rival. You heckin' betcha we're going to be working that day.
Working so hard to beat Georgia State in 2024, Jack.
Oh, no. Yeah, I won't even pull up the stats for our
I don't want to talk about that one.
Last time that happened, Harrison Butker did something good. He's got a big game in a couple weeks. He's got a real big game in a couple weeks.
Very true. Also, the final date before you go, Jake, the Syracuse game is a Saturday. That is at home. That is on the 18th.
All right, no Thursdays this year. Interesting. I thought they were going to keep up with that.
I will note just one more thing. Georgia Tech has only dropped one time to one win in the last 10 years against UGA, and it's not right now. So it could always be worse.
Never know.
Don't count those chickens before they hatch is all I want to say. Gentlemen, softball episode next week, baseball episode probably after that, if I remember Jack's schedule correctly. Any other thoughts before we sign off for the night?
I'm ready for softball. I'm ready for baseball. Bring it on. Bring it on. I think men's tennis will surprise a team or two this year. Women's tennis, they're quality too. So spring's kind of, at least for me, my favorite time of year. So I'm excited. Maybe not my favorites, like sports in aggregate. Love me some volleyball. Love me some men's basketball too. But no, spring's exciting. We got a lot coming up.
I think that's about it for us, Mr. Grant. Take us home.
Yeah, as always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. We post articles with these where you can comment and like and share and subscribe and read all the other great content that Asa and the rest of the gang are putting out every day of the week. You can email us your comments and your feedback at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We really appreciate the feedback, and we work to incorporate that into our shows. If you have any questions for us, feel free to ask them there. We can also be found at FTRS Blog on Twitter. You can find Jack and myself at Jake Grant and at Jack Nicholas there as well. If you find Akshay, no, you didn't, just forget about it. You can find Section 103 on Twitter as well, at Section 103 and section103.com. You can also find From the Rumble Seat at From the Rumble Seat on Instagram and Facebook. You can find podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. And as always, we appreciate if you were to rate, review, share with your friends, and tell them that we are here. As always, it's been another long week, so thank you for tuning in. Good night, good luck, and go Jacks.